Hello dear subscribers and guests of our channel. Open case, today we have the case of Kai Lawrence. To start talking about Kai and everything we now know about his life, we have to go back to February 1, 2013, that day in the city of Fresno, California, United States, witnessed an accident caused intentionally by a man named Jet Simmons McBride, who claimed to be Jesus Christ. In addition to giving a series of racist screams, this man decided to crash his car against a gas company operator, leaving him trapped between his vehicle and the company truck, all this only because he was black. Obviously, some witnesses immediately approached to offer help, starting with a lady who came to check if the operator was okay, when suddenly, McBride, who by the way measured more than 190 and weighs more than 130 kilograms, rushed at her and locked her neck. But this man was not alone. From the passenger seat, a young man jumped out, who in a heroic act, took an axe from his large travel backpack and hit him several times. Blows to the head effectively saving the woman. The story is simply surreal, and after this fact, several local media outlets came to the scene, but it was the journalist Joseph Raisbeck of the television station KNPH who managed an interview with this young man who began to call hero. He himself explained what happened with a rather eccentric story. He also said that his name was Kai, spelled as Kai, when the reporter asked him if he had a last name, which he replied that he actually had nothing and that I was hitchhiking on the highway. It was with this first public appearance that the homeless young man, barely 24 years old, became the new internet celebrity, not only for having saved a woman's life, but because his peculiar story just went viral. A few hours after the journalist uploaded the video of the interview to his YouTube channel, as The Backpacker with the Axe, which is the title by which he is best known, soon the news went around the world. Memes of the part in which Kai says, "smash smash," referring to his defense attack with the axe, songs, remixes, parodies were made, and he was even a special guest on the Jimmy Kimmel Show, and the producer of the famous program Keeping Up with the Kardashians was willing to make him his own show. People were fascinated with this man for some reason. His relaxed personality, while extravagant, was great for people who soon consumed all the content that kept him in mind despite only knowing his name. In the 3 months after the accident and after being with Jimmy Kimmel, Kai began to make a living on social media, mostly through his Facebook page, where he posted every city and the place he visited. He was a nomad, a kind of backpacker who only traveled the country in search of new adventures, and people began to follow him. It was interesting, and if they saw that they were in their area, they did not hesitate to go to meet him. Kai had become a sensation, just as he said. Everything seemed to be going great, until May 16, 2013 arrived. Only 3 months had passed since his rise to fame, and now he was once again in the public spotlight, but not precisely for heroic reasons. That he had been arrested by the police for being the main suspect in the murder of a 73-year-old lawyer named Joseph Kidhafi. In addition, here it was also discovered that his name was not really Kai, but Caleb Lorenzo McGiver. Caleb was born on September 3, 1988 in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and not in Virginia. As he had said in an interview, his parents divorced when Caleb was just 4 years old, and his family remembers him as a small, very loud, and naughty. They were able to go to the train station and request the footage from the security cameras. It didn't take long for them to get it, and when they saw the footage, Mr. Galfi can clearly be seen at one of the ticket machines, buying one of them, and then next to him you could see a young man, with tangled hair covered with a scarf and who was also carrying a travel bag. Quickly, the police contrasted these images with the viral video of Kai. They were almost sure that it was the same subject, but to be completely sure, they contacted the police in Fresno, California, who sent them all the information they had in the database regarding Kai, who had been called to testify in the case of Jeff Simmons McBride, where by the way it was discovered that the story had not been as everyone believed it, but we left that for later. Although it is true that the police had a phone number that apparently belonged to Kai, they could not contact him, so knowing that he was a nomad and that he could be anywhere, they decided to release a statement through the media. It did not take many days until on May 14 that he made a publication through his Facebook account. What would you do if you woke up in a stranger's house with a dazed head, a metallic taste in your mouth? You walk towards the mirror and realize that someone has drugged you, raped you, and ended up on top of you. What would you do? This message implied that perhaps Kai had been a victim of someone, perhaps referring to Joseph Galfi, and that's why he took his life, but these were mere assumptions made as a result of a post on Facebook. They still had to find him and find out what had really happened. Within the investigation, it was also learned that on the day of the events, May 12, Kai had had communication with a follower of his, named Kim, with whom he had contacted through a Facebook and with whom he was agreeing to see himself that night, could not be specified, but they could see each other the next day, and not only that, but some photos were taken that were essential for the investigation, since Kai did not look as in the images of the security cameras of the train station, where he is seen with a Galfi, but that he had cut his hair and apparently now had a tattoo on his face. He arrived on May 16. Then, a young man who was on duty at a Starbucks in Philadelphia managed to recognize him. So he immediately notified the authorities when they arrived. The young man was no longer in that place, but knowing that Kai usually moves from one place to another, one of the police officers decided to go to the city bus station, where he managed to spot him in the waiting room, so he called for reinforcements, and that is where the capture of Caleb McGilvery, also known as Kai, was achieved. Once in police custody, the interrogations began. Kai began to narrate that he met Joseph Galfi in Times Square, where the latter asked him where he was going. Kai told him that he was going to New Jersey, and, coincidentally, Joseph was going to his house located in this place, according to Kai's testimony. Then they went for something to eat. They arrived at Galfi's house, they drank some beers, and he says that the next day he woke up with a metallic taste in his head, mouth, and when he looked in the mirror he noticed that he had dry seminal fluid on his cheek. But despite having thought that Joseph had abused him, he did not confront him, but simply went to the train station where Galfi bought him a ticket to Ashbury. They hugged goodbye and left. After that, once in Asbury, Kai indicates that he was waiting for some friends who had agreed to pick him up for a few hours, but no one ever came, so he decided to go back and look for Joseph to ask him to give him one more night, precisely on the night of Sunday, May 12th, there. Who says that that night Joseph cooked some hamburgers again, they drank some beers, and he doesn't remember anything else until the next day he woke up with Joseph on top of him, trying to take off his pants to subdue him. When they asked him how he defended himself, and he said that he only hit him with his fists to get rid of him for good. He wanted to claim legitimate defense, but as usually happens in all cases of this type, it is the body of the victim and the scene of the crime, which finally helped to clarify how the events happened, and so it was. The results of the autopsy were more than conclusive. Joseph Galfi was brutally beaten, practically kicked to death, had the bones of his face broken, an ear almost detached of his head, and there were signs that he had been dragged down the hall of the house, and even worse, the statements that were inconsistent and indicated that he had been abused by Joseph Galfi, but they found no signs of violence on his body, which made to think to the agents that they had had consensual sexual relations, in addition to the fact that the day after the alleged abuse they are seen giving each other a warm hug at the train station. What also seemed strange to them was that he returned to the home of his alleged attacker one more night, despite knowing that he had abused him. Although this can be seen in two ways, sometimes a victim must return to the perpetrator because there is no other way out, nothing else to do. However, in this particular case, Kai was a backpacker, a person who used to spend days without knowing where to stay, to a person who had the resources to find a place to sleep. That is, it was probably not necessary to return to him. In general, we can concluding that in most of the story it doesn't make sense, but it would be a judge and a jury who would determine what happened. Kai was sent to the Union County Jail in New Jersey while awaiting his trial. In July 2013 he had to be hospitalized after having attempted to kill himself in his cell, but he received timely care and was saved. After having been an internet celebrity and now being accused of murder, public opinion was divided. There were many people disappointed, some others who assured that from the beginning it was seen that the boy would end badly, but another large group of fans gave him their support even while in jail and also raised money for a legal fund. Kai was imprisoned for approximately 6 years before his trial, which began on April 1, 2019. The image of that young man, with a free spirit that everyone celebrated, no longer existed. He even had several outbursts during the trial that almost cost him to be expelled from the courtroom, but later, after pleading self-defense, the jury found Caleb Lawrence McGilvery guilty of first-degree murder and he was sentenced to 57 years in prison. He must serve at least 85% of his sentence, approximately 43.5 years, not counting the years he spent in jail before your trial, before you can apply for parole. Of course, Kai appealed this sentence, alleging the ineffectiveness of the defense attorney, among other irregularities, but finally in August 2021, his sentence was upheld by the New Jersey Appeals Court. As of today, Caleb McGilvery is 34 years old and remains in the maximum security state prison in New Jersey. And regarding the first case in which the incident that occurred in Fresno was involved, after investigations, it was discovered that the story that brought him to fame had not happened as he had narrated it. It turns out that that February day it had been Kai himself, who after giving Jeff Simmons McBride a marijuana cigarette, things that were verified through the corresponding toxicological analyses and later corroborated by Kai himself when he was called to testify in the trial of this subject. He had gotten into his head the idea that he was Jesus Christ and that now, after the effects of the herb, both were ghosts, so they might be able to get through the truck in front of them with their car. Basically, in a few words, he gave him marijuana, and once they were under the effect, he confused him by telling him that it was Jesus Christ. Kai also indicated that minutes before crash, McBride was telling him that he had abused a 14-year-old girl and a series of things that obviously could not be proven. Ultimately, said McBride was found guilty of assault ending in death and was sentenced to spend 9 years in a mental health facility. But hey, that's all for today. That was the case with Kai Lawrence. Tell me what you think in the comments below and subscribe so you don't miss any more cases.